And welcome to this very special edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast in collaboration with BodySlam.net. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm joined by somebody very, very special. He's somebody who influenced my fandom in professional wrestling over the last 20 years, incredibly so. He's also influenced wrestling worldwide, incredibly so, over the last 20 years as well. A lot of what you see on television today has been influenced by the product that he owned, he ambassadored, and he pushed forward and revolutionized the business. I'm joined by the one and the only Cary Silkin. Cary, thank you very much for joining me today. How are you today, sir?
Well, Mark, thank you. Hell of a nice introduction.
Listen, you got to put people over straight away. Put them on the back foot. Yeah.
When I do watch either WWE or AEW, or I go visit, which I did a few weeks ago, to AEW or even TNA or whatever they're called this month. It's like an episode of All My Children.
Yeah. No, it's very much, I get that impression. Like if you watch social media, anytime you do appear in shows, not necessarily from your own social media, but other talent who've worked with you in Ring of Honor, make a point of posting photos with you immediately. So you've obviously made a huge impression. What's it like for you to kind of see all these megastars in the world of WWE, AEW, and beyond who came from your promotion with Ring of Honor? May not necessarily have found the worldwide success they have from Ring of Honor, but still have that love and admiration for what you created.
I mean, I'm happy for everybody that's, did the Ring of Honor platform, here's the question. If Ring of Honor didn't exist, would a Samoa Joe or a Tyler Black / Seth Rollins or a Kevin Steen / Kevin Owens or a Kyle O'Reilly, so on. I mean, or the Mark Briscoe, Jay Lethal, so on and so forth. Would they have had the success? I think a lot of them would have found their way, but without patting myself on the back too much. I think it was such a different climate in wrestling. So when Ring of Honor was starting out, and I wasn't the first year of Ring of Honor, I had no involvement, although I did approach the guys that started it, because I knew Gabe Sapolsky and the other guys because I used to go to ECW Arena. So that's where I met them. And when ECW folded, I had a feeling that these guys were going to get involved and do something. And prior to that, my first foray in the wrestling business, I should have had this ready. Hold on a second. Let me grab something. My first foray in the wrestling business was, and I did a magazine. This is bizarre. or maybe you know about this. I was publisher of a magazine in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Lucha Libre de Puerto Rico. This is like 2000 to 2002. We had a whopping 4 issues. How did this happen? My cousin Mike, who's like an older brother type and still is, he's the one who turned me on to wrestling. He turned me on to a lot of musical influences. I mean, I'm an old guy. I remember when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan in America. And anyway, Mike's been a lifelong music writer, and he also was the editor of Wrestling World magazine in their dying days in the late 90s, because the publishing company, it was all under the banner of the same publishing company. Anyway, we used to go to Puerto Rico on vacation back then, and I said to my cousin, because we went to one of their shows and did an article, and then I said, because it brought me back to wrestling in the 70s.
Okay.
The way the style was there. It was slow, and there was good emotion. Anyway, I had the idea for the magazine, and Mike says to me, my cousin, I'm an editor. You're talking about translation, distribution, I said, well, do any of the titles of, like, his company did magazines ranging from Metal Maniacs to teen magazines to horror magazines to country western. I said, are they distributed in Puerto Rico? Well, lo and behold, they were.
Yeah.
So we needed the cooperation of the two wrestling companies. We could do a whole podcast. There is, on my podcast, with Ian Riccaboni, there's full coverage. My point being, Mark, is that was my official getting in the business.
Yeah.
And Ring of Honor came shortly after.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, listen, as a first foray into wrestling, okay, doing a couple of magazines, brilliant. Like, obviously doing a really cool part of the world with wrestling is almost a religion in Puerto Rico to some people. But then to like immediately go from that to suddenly, I'm gonna run and own a wrestling company. That's kind of a bit of a leap as well. So it's a huge, I suppose, leap of faith in your own abilities and what you saw as a product based on your knowledge of working with Gabe and whatnot beforehand. But you're talking there for a minute ago, and you were talking about, I suppose, would these wrestlers, be it like Jay Lethal, Seth Rollins, Mojo, would they be in the position they're in without your help? I would argue further. I don't think we'd have seen the likes of NXT, Black and Gold, what it was previously without Ring of Honor. I don't think you'd have seen TNA become what it was. Obviously, there's a huge amount of talent crossover there as well, be it around tag teams, X Division, so much more. So there's a huge Ring of Honor influenced so many, and it changed the style and what was accepted amongst wrestling fans, I think, worldwide. So I think you need to give yourself a lot of credit as well for that as well. You touched on it there, like that run from Ring of Honor, particularly when you're under your stewardship from 2002 to 2011, all the way up to when you sold to HGNet. What was the kind of ultimate goal during that period? Was it to become a national competitor, or was it just to be as best you can be, or what was the goal, to develop stars, or what was the underlying goal?
Well, the goal was, I don't even really know if we had a goal.
Yeah.
It was a strange period of time. My primary business was, I was in the ticket resale business, and if you've listened to the Last Stop Penn Station podcast, I tell a lot of stories prior to me having a legitimate ticket brokering business. I started out on the streets.
Yeah.
I hustled at Madison's, in New York City. That we're talking about from the mid 80s into the very early 90s. And there's talk about characters and stories, but that led to me getting involved with the ticket business on getting off the street. There's a lot to it. I'm a lifelong addict, and I was in heavy addiction during that period, and it was fast money, but didn't matter what you made. But anyway, I cleaned up my act. I got into the, if you want, legitimate, I was a tout. Isn't that what they call you?
Yeah.
There's no more street scalping with the fucking mobile tickets and everything.
Yeah.
If you go to an event, it's like, it was almost charming, to go, and you're old enough to go to a a football match, a concert of whoever you like, and guys were on the street. Who needs tickets? Who's selling tickets, right?
Yeah.
It's gone. But anyway, the ticket. So when I got, there's all kinds of layers to this, but I opened my own agency in 1998, and I got lucky. This was before ticket prices for concerts were just like they are now. They're just stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if it's Taylor Swift or it's Metallica or if it's old Jethro Tull. I mean, the prices are just crazy.
Yeah.
So, but at that time in 98, 99, through the early 2000s, you know, you could buy a Metallica ticket. They had, if it was an arena show, maybe $30 to $75, whatever, and you could make some money. So the ticket business, and Broadway too. I was near New York City. I got lucky with a few Broadway shows that were mega hits, like Lion King at the time, and I had some good instincts from the street. You know, you could like smell something almost that it's going to be hot. And I've also had my shares of disasters.
Yeah.
With tickets. It's the nature of what you do. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. But for the most part, business was good, and that money, I will get to your question.
Sorry.
That money from the ticket business funded Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
The ticket business, your question was like, what was our goal? Well, our goal was to, you know, stay alive. In the beginning, Ring of Honor was based, as far as a business, as a DVD company. Even though it was a month, you know, if I shoulda, woulda, coulda, and all that, it was a month. We would do a show, and then people would buy the DVD, even though the results were a month old, even though it's been reported on, they still wanted to see it.
Yeah.
There was no YouTube yet. And that was the business model. It wasn't a good business model. We eventually, we did, before we got TV with HDNet, we did these pre-recorded pay-per-views. We did like 5 or 6 of them, and they did pretty well. But the Mark, the whole time from when I was fully involved, we're talking 2005, 2006, 7, 8. A child that knew basic math would have said to me, "Oh, Mr. Sir, this doesn't look right." Like it was just financially, it was a disaster. So why did I stay in it? Well, some of it was ego, some of it was my passion. But I think the number one reason was, well, there was number 1 and 1A were ego, and I knew we had a good thing.
Yeah.
I knew we had a good fucking product. There wasn't a million independent companies around, and there was a great spirit in Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Whether it was, you know, during the period where Gabe was booking, and then Adam Pierce, I switched and had Adam Pierce, and eventually Delirious.
Yeah.
But even in our lowest, you know, we had hot periods and not so hot periods, but there was always the feeling of, you know, go team. Let's get them. Yeah. Even when Sinclair bought the company, finally for me, I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm like a man bleeding on the street.
Yeah.
Please buy this, and which they did, and I was grateful. And Joe Koff the CEO of Sinclair, good man, and I
Yeah.
still talk to him. You know, they wanted to keep me around as the ambassador. They didn't want people to think, oh, the good old Ring of Honor, where if you left the show, Cary would be at the front a lot of times, thanking the people or shaking hands. They wanted to, they knew that, you know, they didn't want it to be looked at like, oh, it's a big corporate thing now.
Yeah.
So it was nice. That was my favorite time of Ring of Honor because I didn't have any responsibility. I would, Mark, I would go to a show if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I would go to New York or maybe Chicago. Everything was paid. And the best thing of all was when I left the show, it was like,
yeah,
I ain't sweating. So it was a really nice period. And so your original question, it was just about the passion,
yeah,
and the ego, and I knew we had something good.
But I mean, like, not everybody's in a position whereby they can follow their passion, which is really fortunate. And like, listen, the fact that you managed to do it for close to a decade was unbelievable. Then off the back of that, you get the payoff. Big company comes in, HGNet, Sinclair Broadcasting, and they take it on even further to the point where, up to pre-COVID, Ring of Honor is the hottest thing in town. Do you know what I mean? Up to the birth of AEW, because then it culminates through your partnerships with New Japan. You get into All In and whatnot. What was that like, seeing that, like, let's see, TNA's kind of stepping aside, or Impact Wrestling, whatever they were that week, they kind of end up kind of falling down the pecking order. You've got a product in partnerships with the likes of New Japan where you're growing in a more public awareness. All around the world, people are tuning into Ring of Honor shows to watch, particularly around the likes of the Elite in the late 2010s. What was that like for you to see that payoff like 15, 20 years down the line?
Oh, it was awesome, but it happened much earlier than that.
Yeah.
You know, back in 2005-ish, definitely 6, we were approached by Pro Wrestling Noah. He approached us.
Yeah.
I remember Gabe, it was like, Cary, you're not going to believe this. You know, and the guys, you know, Pro Wrestling Noah at that time was neck and neck with New Japan.
Yeah.
And they were really nice people. And they, you know, we're talking, so they wanted a presence in the United States. They didn't want to work with WWE, and I don't think WWE wanted to work with them. TNA was too stupid to do it the way they operated.
Yep.
You know, if someone doesn't like me saying that, oh well. But they see, you know, TNA, they had their own agenda. So Pro Wrestling Noah was, you know, and they knew we were doing shows in Dayton, Ohio, in front of 600 people. You know, New York, we get a nice crowd, you know, 1,200. But we weren't having, you know, arenas. But they wanted the idea of whether it was 500 people or 1,200, footage of their star wrestlers wrestling in the United States. So what a rub we got from that. And, you know, we're talking about Kenta, Marufuji, Morishima, who was had the Ring of Honor belt. And so that preceded the, and you know, Great Muta came in and Jushin Liger came in for a couple shots, but that, what I'm talking about, during my era, that preceded the Elite or the Bullet Club stuff. By 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was awesome because the guys from Noah, they were able to bring us. We couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But they brought us over to Tokyo twice.
Awesome.
Plus, we were working with Dragon Gate a little. They didn't like each other. And so we got to go to Japan twice. We got to go to the UK in 2005, and you were too young.
Yeah.
2005 and 2006.
Yeah.
In Liverpool. It was awesome.
Brian and Nigel, yeah.
A lot of fun. I remember being in Liverpool in August. I'm like, good. At least it'll be warm out. And at the time, I used to like to jog, and I can't do that anymore, but I still exercise, but I would jog. And wherever city, if it not in the freezing weather, but if it was 60 degrees or more, I'm jogging. So, which was fun because wherever I'd go, I would do it if the weather was right. So we go to Liverpool. Was it the first time? The second trip. All I know, it was 47 fucking degrees in August. High temperature. I'm like, what the was this? But the people, the fans were good. So, yeah, man, it was a confluence of events and just things that happened. And then we can move on to the whole thing with the next wave with the Bullet Club and all that.
Yeah, no, I mean that period to the 2005, going back in reflection, like I wasn't necessarily watching all wrestling back at that stage in my younger age, but on reflection, even watching it back now, those of us who are on Honor Club get to watch that regularly. Like talking about those matches with Bryan Danielson, those Noah participants back then in particular, were absolutely incredible. But it did have a sense of like, it almost felt like an underground thing, Ring of Honor, as opposed to say in the late 2010s, mid 2010s, Bullet Club Elite and all that. That felt like more, I don't know, public zeitgeist through YouTube and social media exploding. Just off the back of that, people got more eyes in your product, more eyes in the product these guys are producing. Again, so like having that, I suppose, worldwide eyes and acclaim as such for guys in your promotion under your banner, as you're the ambassador for as well, something you've helped drive for years and years and years. Was there a sense of satisfaction or personal satisfaction getting to see that, like, okay, now we're being accepted as probably the best wrestling company in the entire world without question, not just this underground thing that a lot of people followed for years and years?
You're talking about back in the earlier period or
post? No, I'm talking particularly, like, say, from 2014 onwards, that kind of stretch of period.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, of course, that period of time, I was just happy that, as I aforementioned, I could go to these events and be treated like the family dog at Christmas. Everybody was nice to me. Everybody petted me. They gave me a little food under the table, and and then the Ring of Honor under Sinclair, there was, just like anything else, there was a lot of good, a lot of ups and downs, and eventually leading to when Cody and I was a big advocate. I remember the first time the Bucks came to Ring of Honor. Adam Pearce comes up to me. He says, listen, because he lived in California at the time. I've got these two kids. Cary, you're not going to believe it. I go, well, where are they from? He goes, he goes, look, they're only 75 bucks a piece. And I got him like a $99 flight, some discounted Spirit Airlines or something.
Yeah.
So I knew the Bucks from 2008, and I was very good friends with them. I wish, we've faded. I mean, they've stayed here numbers of times. I've hung out with them and their family. And I was a big fan of theirs. And to see what happened with them, there was a period in time in 2012-ish, they were ready to quit. I mean, you could read their book.
Yeah.
I'm the one that told them, get some fucking merch.
Okay.
And I helped them out a little bit financially, and this happened and that happened, they got to go to Japan, not through me, and the whole Bullet Club thing blew up. And when they were, when they were getting a name back, and what year was it that Cody Rhodes came over to Ring of Honor?
2016.
Right. So Cody, the Bucks, Frankie Kazarian, who'd been knocking around, good guy. He's a good friend, and Ring of Honor caught on fire again for that level.
Yeah.
As opposed to my era, the biggest crowd we ever drew under my era was at WrestleMania. The WrestleMania that was in Chicago in 2006 or 5.
Okay.
Whatever it was, we had like 2,000. We did 2 nights in Chicago. Yeah. One night was 1,700 legit. One night was 2,000. But with that, when Cody was hot and the Bucks were hot, and throw in Dalton Castle and these other guys that were, I'm leaving so many names out. The Briscoes were always there. Talk about most valuable players, and Lethal had been back, and Cabana, and just so many guys. And we did, like, I don't know, in New Orleans, like 7,000 people, awesome. which was really cool.
Yeah. So
yeah, and but the top of the pops was, and I'm very grateful to Joe Koff and Gary Juster. I don't know if you're familiar with that name. Gary Juster booked the buildings for the NWA and WCW right till the dying day when they of the last WCW show, and he got involved with ROH through Jim Cornette. And anyway, after Gary stayed with Ring of Honor through the end until Tony Khan bought it, but we got to do Madison Square Garden.
That was incredible.
2019. I mean, the odds of me not only, first of all, going there as a fan, and seeing every fucking concert. I mean, I still go to shows there, but my age in the 70s, 1 week we go see the Who, 1 week we go to see the Grateful Dead, one week we didn't care, like you would think, like, oh, Elton John and Black Sabbath are like polar opposites.
Yeah.
Back then, you really couldn't tell the difference in the crowds.
Yeah.
It was like just rock and roll.
Yeah.
So I had spent a lot of time, and then all the years I spent in front of Madison Square Garden, hustling tickets.
Yeah.
And there was some ugly stuff happened in that era. And then going to shows for 50 years. Next Wednesday, I'm going to the final Billy Joel show. He does a residence. Wow. Yeah.
Amazing.
He does a residency at the Garden. He's been doing it since 2015. Will he ever play there again? Probably, but they're saying that this is his last show of the residency.
Wow.
And he always has good guests. It could be a Bon Jovi. It could be a Paul McCartney if Springsteen's around, whatever. But for me, and Ring of Honor in name, getting to do Madison Square Garden in 2019, sold out.
Yeah.
It was like the odds of this, Mark, for me, considering my history, considering my lifestyle that I survived somehow, and everything else, the odds of me getting to stand in the ring and present the belt to Matt Taven and sit at ringside. It was amazing. So, you know, I really can't. That was, you know, talk about a payoff.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
That's an incredible full circle moment, obviously, in a personal level as much as anything. Later on, you were recognized, though. You became one of the first inductees into the Ring of Honor Hall of Fame as a Legacy Award. What did that mean, on top of everything you just outlined in terms of performing at Madison Square Garden, the Ring of Honor, going back to your own personal history? What was it like to be kind of recognized in that official format post-COVID when the new ownership had kind of taken place?
Well, that was sweet. I had a feeling they might be. They didn't tell me, but they asked me, "Can I come to Baltimore? They're going to do these awards, and you know, it'd be nice to have you there." Making a few comments about Samoa Joe or Bryan Danielson. This was still under Sinclair, and then they surprised me as like the, you know, Ian Riccaboni. It was very nice. You know, it meant a lot. It's good stuff, man. I've been very lucky. Sometimes it's like everything in life, you know, you gotta like take a deep breath and sit back and look at it. You know, you know, when I'm sitting here watching TV or whatever, and just thinking all the bullshit your head thinks, just everybody thinks.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I'm sitting around going like, wow, what a dream come true. You know, once in a while I do. And I appreciate a guy like you making me aware of that, as opposed to, oh, this sucks. I'm sitting here with whatever. No one's around. I'm by myself. So yeah. But as far as the career, and then when Tony bought it, I was there at the first, you know, that transition show.
Yeah.
I got to go in the ring, present the belts with FTR.
Yeah.
Good guys.
I was there for that.
Were you there?
I was there at Supercard of Honor in Dallas. Yeah.
That was whatever. That was the last great Ring of Honor show.
Yeah. There was a number, like, obviously there's a number of their milestone matches and kind of shows that they've done. Obviously they kind of do their 3 pay-per-views for a year. They're always turning out to be good events. They're not necessarily that they don't have necessarily the same builds that they would have had previously. You can feel like, I feel like quarterly or thirdly annual pay-per-views at this stage without anything going on huge in between. Like at the time when Tony Khan bought Ring of Honor, you kind of came out publicly and you said, listen, it feels like a gut punch, but also great joy, because like he was a wrestling guy rather than somebody else who might have been more involved in television, or say WWE come in that might just become part of their catalog rather than somebody who's actively probably still a Ring of Honor fan. Like when Ring of Honor was bought by AEW, it did feature prominently within AEW television for a few years, but then it's kind of faded away now, and like it's not necessarily being featured on a weekly, monthly basis. Like they're doing their show programs on a Thursday night on Honor Club. That a handful of matches are recorded at the end of or before Collision a lot of times. Like I know you said recently you're not overly happy with how it's being treated.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how that quote got picked up.
I know, yeah. Like a lot of things get taken out of context more than anything.
What they left out, if you listen to the show, you know, I do the podcast, Matt Memories, with John Arezzi. He'll plug it again at the end. But I also said, hey, I'm happy everyone's got a place to work. And I'm sure Tony Khan will get Ring of Honor on television. He's a busy man.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, and for me saying, well, nobody really cares about it. They don't. How can they?
Yeah.
It's not in a position. Listen, I've met Tony Khan. He's an awesome guy. My friends all work for him. Nobody personally. Yes, he gets criticized by all these fucking podcasts and this and that. But hey, deep down, he's a good guy. And I know damn well his intentions for Ring of Honor will be as best as possible. How can he manage everything? I mean, it's insanity.
Yeah.
So But I'm glad you were at that show. I got a little story from that show.
Oh, awesome.
2022. Remember the unreal match between the Briscoes and FTR?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's my favorite match of all time. Yeah,
oh,
I'm friends with Dax and Cash as well, and like it changed my look on wrestling. Everything that match, it was unbelievable for me personally as much as anything.
so I was told. Remember that the Bucks came in the end after the decision,
Yeah.
right? And so I was told, "Hey, Cary, um, if you give these guys the belts, do it quick and get out of the ring because I could barely get in it." I'm like, "All right, yeah, no sweat." So 1, 2, 3. Briscoes are down, FTR's down. I drag my ass into the ring. Bobby Cruz gives me the belts, and I go over to FTR, and they're still on the floor. And as Jerry Lynn would say to me, they're selling down. And I knew, give them the belts, up or down, and get the hell out of there. So that's what I do. And I give the belt to Cash and I give the belt to Dax. And as I start to make a step, Dax is still on the ground. He grabs my arm. He goes, I want you to raise, I want you to raise our hands. I'm like, all right. So they came up and it was very, he was very respectful, and he wanted that moment. That I guess for him it was, Cary Silkin is raising our hands, and the Bucks in their little attack can wait 30 seconds. So that was a really special thing. They're good guys.
Really good guys. I've gotten to know them. They're really good people. But not only that, they've been given presented by Cary Silkin with the original Ring of Honor tag team titles as well. They changed the belts up for that match as well. So it meant a huge amount to them and everybody involved in that match. That show itself did a huge amount for me personally in my life and whatnot. And I think it's a lasting memory I'll have of me for the rest of my life. But just in terms of kind of a future outlook for Ring of Honor, I know you touched on like Tony Khan's got 1,000,001 different people asking to him or throwing advice to him as well. There's a period where he had featured Ring of Honor titles and people prominently across every AEW program. But then you've got, as you say, all these podcasters and people with opinions start throwing shit at the wall, see what sticks, what resonates with people online, and suddenly it's like poking the bear. So he's trying to get market Ring of Honor through AEW programming. It's just my take. And then suddenly people, just for the sake of being negative, are then forcing his hand on that. So he has to go away then, work on a television deal, I believe, whatever's going on at the minute. And I'm sure this summer now with the Ring of Honor residency down in Dallas and Arlington, there's going to be some big news around that. I pray for anyway, given that there's going to be Ring of Honor specific shows in a stage setting. The esports arena is going to be very modern. It's going to have a unique look, and Death Before Dishonor on the horizon. I'm personally very excited for it. Is there any kind of hopes and dreams you have for how Ring of Honor be treated going forward, or even this show is going somewhere?
What I would like to see, listen, once again, Tony Khan's a good guy and he's got a lot of stuff on his plate. But what I would like to see is you got Jay Lethal, you got Taven Bennett, Roderick Strong, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly,
Dalton Castle.
Thank you, Dalton Castle. Who are the other 10 names I'm leaving? Mark Briscoe, of course. There's probably another 10 names. Shane Taylor.
Yeah.
And a number of other names that I'm leaving off the list. It's like these are guys that were all associated with Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
And they should, maybe I never was a booker, but let there be these names I see on the card. All right, I get it. years have gone by, but if you have these names that these names of legacy, use them.
Yeah.
That would be, I would feel better as opposed to gravity, whomever. But it's okay. It's okay. It's a different thing. My friend Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman are still the announcers.
Yeah.
Bobby Cruz, who I've known for too long.
Yeah.
God bless him. He's still there, and he's doing really well with AEW. And I mean, I couldn't even tell you one match that's coming up for this Ring of Honor show, but I'll watch it.
Yeah, and you'll have to see the likes of Athena. You see Roderick Strong in the main event going for the Ring of Honor World Title, and there are
that's a Ring of Honor match.
It is, but also the I suppose the counter argument to that is that he's been featured so heavily in AEW that he's suddenly been pigeonholed into a match in a Ring of Honor show. So there is that kind of back and forth critique you see people online. Listen, I'm hugely excited for the show. There's Ring of Honor shows and 3 times a year, whatever they are, and these big pay-per-view events, they're always absolutely incredible. I was going to ask if you thought there'd be somebody should be specifically booking these programs for Ring of Honor, but like obviously that's I think the general consensus these days. But listen, I am a huge fan of you and your content. I've gone back previously in the past to listen to a number of the Last Stop Penn Station episodes with who I think is the best play-by-play announcer in wrestling, Ian Riccaboni as well. Where can fans from this part of the world, where can they find your Last Stop Penn Station episodes if they're going to look into listen to a podcast? Or as you touched on previously, your Matt Memories podcast where you talk about MSG classic shows with John Arezzi and whatnot.
Well, I'll tell the listeners 1 second, but real quick. We left off Samoa Joe.
Yeah, Bryan Danielson.
And Bryan Danielson. So if there's a Ring of Honor pay-per-view, use them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
But, they're in other programs. Yeah. But whatever. That's my selfish thinking. As far as Last Stop Penn Station, there's 75 episodes. It's R to X rated because of all my misadventures, and I bare my soul on that podcast. It's listed not just as a wrestler. It's listed as a personal journal.
Yeah, and
I just talk about these great wrestling stories and these some ugly shit and from my life and about addiction and dereliction and New York City and what was it like in the 70s and 80s. It was a lot of fun.
That's what I'm gathering. Yeah.
It's like there was like one glory hole per person. But and as much cocaine as you had money for.
Yeah.
It's the way it was. But I mean, there was a charm to it. But anyway, all the stories from Last Stop Penn Station, which obviously include a lot of wrestling content, the magazine in Puerto Rico, my involvement in Ring of Honor, stories about working with Mick Foley and Jim Cornette and the other, we used to have a good Ring of Honor and Tony does this also. Here, Dave Meltzer, listen to this. Tony has respect for, old school wrestling, and we've seen this for the last 5 years. And I like that, bringing these legends and we did that, with Harley Race, Bill Watts, Steamboat was with us for like 6 shows, Foley, Cornette, Midnight Express, Tommy Rich, Luke Williams. There's a laundry list. But so all my stories involving my Ring of Honor adventures and not so great times it's all contained in Last Stop Penn Station, and it's available. I'm sure, like, I don't know if this show is on. I mean, I'm on iTunes, Spotify, all the,
Yep.
you know, all the various podcast platforms. And the Matt Memories, I enjoy doing that once a month with John Arezzi, where John Arezzi and myself are two of the sole survivors. Well, actually, there's a few others, but we go back 50 freaking years to these Madison Square Garden shows, and we discuss, because I was there, he was there. We had George Napolitano as the photographer, as a special guest recently. We had Evan Ginsberg, who, if you don't know that name, he's got a lot of good stuff online. I'm not giving him his proper due here, but Evan also got us involved with Darren Aronofsky to do the Wrestler movie, which was another amazing experience.
Yep.
You know, getting to hang out with a not so healthy Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
But you know, we thought that was so. We do Matt Memories, which is also on all the various podcast platforms. I'm just looking here. We're going to be doing one soon, because there was a Madison Square Garden card July 22nd. So that's you know, if you want to hear these stories,
definitely,
they're out there. I was talking to my buddy Jimmy Jacobs, and who works at AEW, and he likes my stories, and there was a couple of episodes of Last Stop Penn Station that are very gritty. When I had to go to New Orleans, he's like, Jimmy, like, Cary, you got this. This should be a one-man show. I go, you only like it because you know me.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's you want to hear these stories, they're out there. Will there be more? I don't know.
Who knows? But there's a huge back catalog, and there's hugely incredible stories to listen to, both in your personal life, but also on the Matt Wrestling podcast, where you're talking about these incredible shows throughout Madison Square Garden history. As many of our people see this, watching this episode through YouTube, you can see the amazing posters behind you there as well, and you're regularly posting images of these posters and other amazing wrestling memorabilia onto your Twitter feed and Instagram and whatnot as well. So listen, Cary, as I said at the top of this show, you've been a huge influence on the industry. You've been a huge influence on many of us in terms of what we appreciate within wrestling, the product you produce and been a part of. So I want to thank you hugely for your time today and for everything you've done for the business.
You're welcome. You're a good guy, and you're very kind. And if you want to talk, if you're ever desperate for a guest, let me know.
No, I definitely 100% will be back in contact in the future. Cary, listen, you're an absolute gentleman. Thank you very, very much.